Should be working. Welcome. Well, let's see here. Yeah, welcome. All right, now it's working. Hey, hello. Thanks for watching, for tuning in here. We're going to get started in just a little bit. Welcome to the History Chats this afternoon. If you're watching live, if you're watching later, feel free to skip ahead. We're just going to kind of hang out for a couple minutes here while people get a chance to join. So we're going to start at 12:30. But again, if you're joining us later, don't need to stick around for the whole thing if you don't, because you have the ability to fast forward time a little bit. But yeah, for those of you who are joining us live, welcome. We're going to get started in just a little bit. Okay. So while we're waiting, I guess it's kind of some public announcements here that we probably could go through real quick. If you had seen or advertisements for our first History Speaks of the month, or of the year, actually, this was going to be this weekend, but unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control, we just had to postpone it. The folks at the Wisconsin Valley Improvement Company decided it was probably in the best interest to not do it this week. So, that's the way it goes in 2022. We still have, nothing settled yet. So, understand that is the case, and we'll have to hopefully get them back at some point in some form to talk about a very interesting topic, but yeah, it won't be this weekend. But I can say, even though we won't be doing this particular program, History Speaks will be getting going in February at least. We're going to be, and I think this might be the first announcement of this, so here's your sneak peek, I guess. But February we're going to have Rick Ryer from Wisconsin Public Radio, and he's going to be talking about the history of Wisconsin's public media. So this is the Wisconsin Public Radio and Wisconsin Public Television, sort of how did they get to what they are, what does it look like, and I think he's going to kind of take a take on this of being, what makes something trustworthy in the media, and with all of the other stuff that we have to sort through these days with all the different sources of supposed news. What can what is the public media for Wisconsin doing to make it so that we can trust them, and the vetting the sources and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's the idea behind this, and just kind of a general look at media in the public in the current era. So we'll look forward to that. Again, that'll be next month, February 26th. On Saturday at 2 p.m. And this will, again, for the time being, we are doing these completely digital like we have been doing the last year. Hopefully at some point this year, the situation with COVID will recover to the point where we can, do some stuff in person or some hybrid, but for now, this is what we're going to be doing. So yeah. I guess today we're continuing our sort of introduction here. This year, 2022, it is the 150th anniversary of the City Charter of Wausau. So it's been 150 years since the City of Wausau became a city. And so we've been looking at some different aspects of the origin of the city, the important institution last week of our City Hall. Today, I thought it would be kind of interesting to look at the way that we've represented the City of Wausau in different contexts. So yeah, why don't we just get into that here? Nope. There we go. Hi. Take those off. Yeah, so today we're talking about the logos, and that's what we're gonna kind of go through. Logos, emblems, the seal. There's a lot of different ways of things that represent the wider city of Wausau. Before I get too deep into this, again, at any point, if you have any questions or comments, please do put those in the chat. I will have some time at the end to kind of answer anything or talk about anything that comes up if it's relevant. I usually forget to mention that before we jump in, so I remember this time. Anyway, yeah, logos of Wausau. As you might expect, logos is not necessarily an original thing. Some cities have a very old history of something that represents them. For example, the city seal. And so let's talk about the concept of the city seal for a second, because this is often one of the first instances in the 1800s. Many, for example, the city of Milwaukee back in 1846 has a city seal, which the sort of design for this was apparently used in some form, excuse me, even before it became a city. So sort of unofficial documents for the Milwaukee municipality before it was officially a city, but this has become the representation of the city as a whole. And the concept of the seal actually kind of, at the center of it, if we look at like Wisconsin's seal, so this is our official seal on the left. And on the right, you can see this, the core of it is our coat of arms, which is an interesting kind of concept that is inherited from, medieval Europe, where you have a community might be run by a local lord and their family crest, or, heraldry is kind of a big deal. And so, if you go to states or cities or counties equivalents in Europe, in Great Britain or Germany or wherever you're going to go, you will see often that there is sort of a deep history of heraldry that represents the city. And so, very frequently in the United States, we've kind of inherited this tradition. And so, yeah, we kind of take a seal. The coat of arms is, a pastiche of different things that represent the community as we think of it. So in Wisconsin, here we have, sailor, miners, the badger. Actually, this is an earlier version of it, so you can see it has existed for a while. Yeah, then that becomes the basis for the seal, as well as our flag for this. And arguably, some people have argued that this is maybe a lazy way to do this, of just taking the seal, throwing it in there, and then but it works. At least it's very recognizable as Wisconsin. I won't get into that whole thing today. So for the city of Wausau, when do because we do have a city seal. If you tuned in last week, you remember Gary perhaps talking about how this came to be. But if you didn't, basically back in 1913, there was an attempt to try to renovate the city hall in Wausau. And as part of that, they ended up giving the commission to a local artist named Carl Hummel. And he goes in and renovates and redecorates. And he's an artist, and so he paints this and makes this physical seal to represent the city of Wausau. And it's still at the courthouse to this day. And this becomes the official seal, which is kind of interesting. Now, this is not obviously something that you can just stamp on a form like the idea of a seal in some other cases, right? So later we take a simplified version of this that appears, like that. But I don't think that I could be wrong. I will say I don't really have a lot of physical evidence to say one way or the other, but I would imagine that the one on the right was based off of the one on the left, as opposed to a painting of a more flushed out version of the seal. Again, I could be wrong, but I think that's likely the case, and we'll maybe talk a little bit about that in a bit. But yeah, that's the City of Wausau's seal. Now, what do you use a seal for? It's just kind of two things. One is to make things official, right? Often, again, going back to like the medieval era in Europe, or even older, where you have like the notaries, right? The seal. This is an official document. It's not just something that you put together on your side. That makes it official. So there's a governmental sort of office that does this. Similar kind of idea, right? By using the city seal, it adds legitimacy. Like, for example, the following year, after the city redecorates in 1913, in 1914, this appears in the local paper announcing the candidates, basically saying, here's where you go to vote, here's a dummy ballot, here's what you'll see when you go there, so you know who's on the ballot. And if you look at the bottom here, it has explaining this. At the very bottom, the city clerk signs it, given under my hand and official seal at the city of Wausau, this 18th day of March, AD 1914. And this is a format that is borrowed from other sources, I think. I've seen, predating this, the state of Wisconsin, often official reports are ended thus. Usually clerks or secretaries, when they're officially reporting documents from the government or events like the minutes of an important commission, or announcing the results of an election, or announcing an election to the public. This, by saying it's given under my hand, I did it, but also it's under the official seal of the city of Wausau, and that gives it some legitimacy. It makes it official. And this is something that is repeated throughout the 20th century. I don't know if they still do it today. These days I don't think that they would necessarily, local governments aren't expected necessarily to put it in the newspaper of note of saying this is how you know that the election is coming. But when they do, you can see that over the years from 19 the teens up until I think the 1989 is the last time I can find the specific usage of this phrase. Um, yeah, and it's pretty common. So that's one thing. You can make it official, but it also has come to represent the city of Wausau as a larger institution. So this, I believe, starts around here. This is from the 1922 golden anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the city of Wausau. It became a city in 1872. 50 years later, the Daily Herald, the Wausau Daily Record Herald, I should say, puts out this edition. And the cover is this wonderful artwork that let's see, Jane Reed Thompson puts together. And they basically just tell her, we want something that shows the before and after, so, the past and the present, and she puts this together. And in the center, of course, you have the seal of Wausau. This is, on the shoulder. And I think, again, I could be wrong about this, but I believe this might be the first attempt to simplify that painting that Mr. Hummel had done back in 1913. So she kind of makes it a little bit more usable. And it may then, I don't know, again, I don't know for sure, but I think that it's all likelihood that this then gets used as the basis for the later simplified seal that's used by the city. But we'll get to that bit in a little bit. Either way, this represents the city of Wausau, right? Like I said, I forgot where I put this in. Much closer. So this is from 1990s. They decide this is the official directory of the city government for the city of Wausau. And there's the seal right on it. And there's other examples of this too. I understand that maybe the police department had this seal in, worked in their badges or some sort of insignia there. Particularly at this point in the 90s into the early 2000s, it becomes used pretty extensively to represent the city. It's not quite a logo, but it kind of becomes a quasi-logo. But before I get to logo, we need to talk briefly about a slogan. So this is an interesting story. Back in around the time that they are creating the seal, right? It's not that there are other people in the area, particularly the Wausau Advancement Association, which is the basically precursor to one of the precursors to the Chamber of Commerce. They announced that, hey, Wausau needs a slogan. And so we're going to have a public competition. Give us your suggestions. What should we call the slogan? What's the slogan for Wausau? And there's some very interesting choice. This is from an article kind of announcing some of the front runners and saying, hey, you got a couple days left. Here are some of the front runners at this point in April. Wausau, the goal of the marathon, which is kind of clever. Marathon is a race as well as the county, but also okay, I can see why that didn't necessarily pan through once you start to think about what that means. Health and wealth in Wausau. Can't beat a rhyme, right? Not bad. The Northern Beauty. And there's going to be some similarities here. The Pride of the North. And then we got this whole Wausau, the heart of Wisconsin. Wausau, the city of opportunity. Wausau, the gateway to northern Wisconsin and her opportunity. Wausau, the power of the North. So, yeah, there's some choices here. But ultimately, what they end up going with was a last-minute addition suggestion by C.E. Turner. Among hundreds, apparently. They got hundreds of submissions. As far as away from, Mexico, apparently. But anyway, work for Wausau. This is Mr. Turner's suggestion, and this is what they end up doing. So what is the point of this? They say in the announcement that a request is made to all Wausau citizens, especially to those who travel a great deal, to familiarize themselves with the slogan and use it on all possible occasions. Basically, the idea here is, doesn't really matter what it says, it's just get the name out there. And later they also say, the value of the slogan does not lie so much in the value for the internal use, the town itself, as in its advertising value to the town. This is the era in which we want to get people to put their businesses here. We want to get, people to know this community so that when they get the choice of being like, well, the railroad needs to go through someplace, maybe there's going to be expansion of the highway. Well, if people know the name Wausau and the name's right there in the title, well then, hey, that's mission accomplished. Advertising is kind of in the early infancy at this point, not to what it's going to become later. But yeah, to solidify this, they also arrange very quickly. They have it arranged to like be on buttons that people can wear, around and out in public and all that. But also to make postcards to send out there so that people get the name out there. But they also kind of as a stunt. They end up putting it on the top of City Hall. And again, Gary talked about this last week, but basically this huge signage. It was 20 feet tall by 30 feet wide. It's electrified, so at night there would be lights that would light it up and shine out, saying "Work for Wausau," so everybody could see. It was quite the marvel. They called it a large automatic sign, which is actually kind of. I don't know what automatic means in this context. I guess they could turn on the lights. But either way, it's electrified. It's quite the thing, and it does have an effect. People do know and remember the name, the phrase "work for Wausau." It's worth noting before we get into the sort of the demise of this and why we don't still have this up. This is not something the city of Wausau is officially doing. This is not an official logo. This is something that like the Chamber of Commerce is doing. Um, that being said, it is kind of representing Wausau. It's kind of having the same effect, right? So anyway, this becomes well known. As I said, people do know it. There's some fun anecdotal stuff about how, for example, in the Anago paper, after suffering a loss to Wausau's baseball team, they came back and the reporter said, well, it was a close game, but I guess the umpires are working a little too hard for Wausau, you know. The implication being there that it wasn't a fair game, but whatever. There's stuff like that gets thrown around, but ultimately it's all fun until the Great Depression. In the 30s, it becomes, if you are, going downtown to see if you can get a job, or you have your hours cut, or maybe you get laid off, and then there's City Hall saying "Work for Wausau" when you can't work. It kind of has the wrong ring to it. They do apparently change it somehow to kind of remove the Wausau and make it USA, sort of a patriotic thing. I've seen pictures of it, and I can't remember exactly what it looked like or where I saw them, so I wasn't able to grab those. But get the idea. Ultimately, though, in 1934, there was a windstorm that blew it down. And so the scaffolding came down, and they just decided that was a good enough sign that we should just let it go. So, Work for Wausau, we got a slogan, we got a seal. How do we get into the logos? Well, one of the things that you can do is you can go, what makes us important? What do people know us as a community? And in the 1950s, it very quickly became Employers Mutual, or Wausau Insurance later. Some of you may know it as that name. But Employers was like one of the big successes of this area. And they were particularly good at advertising. In 1952, they had this ad that they put out showing Wausau. You've probably seen this ad. Forget I had my mirrored camera. Okay. Yeah, you've seen this, right? This is this very familiar Depot logo. I've talked about it in past programs before. And so the city of Wausau adopts it. Again, maybe not the city of Wausau officially. I believe it was the. Let's see if I wrote it down. The Wausau Convention and Visitors Bureau starts to make heavy use of it. So they put this up there. Again, this is what we're known for, right? This is from the Beautification Week efforts in the 60s, 70s. And so, yeah, you can put up garbage cans. This is the fire department kind of deploying things. And we're going to have the logo right there to represent Wausau. Now, eventually, though, there is okay, well, before we get into the demise of that, I guess I threw this in here too. You can see the importance of the depot and some other things here too. In 1972, for the centennial of the city of Wausau, they decided to have an emblem. They didn't call it a logo, they called it an emblem. And they asked the public to submit their designs. And so you can see a bunch of them here. These are some of the front runners. And you can see some of the similarities here. You got you got to have the number in there someplace. You got depots in the bottom left and right. You got Rib Mountain in the background of a bunch of these. Ultimately, they decided to go with this one, which has some very subtle thing. You got the trees, you got Rib Mountain in the background. There's this log, but yeah. Point is, when you represent the community, the depot looms very large. The Rib Mountain very large as well. So on the right here, you can see the program saying, "Here's the centennial celebration." This is for like the first settlement in Marathon County. which also happens to be at Wausau. So there's kind of like two parallel celebrations that we sometimes celebrate. But yeah, that's one. And then you can see the coin, the commemorative coin from the homecoming that we did in 32. And again, Rib Mountain looms large in representing the community. Okay, but back to the depot. Eventually, the depot is not usable. Basically, in like 1978, 79, there is a national court case that changes the trademark law that makes it clear that you can't enforce a trademark with some places and not others, right? So if you're Employers Mutual, you're the insurance company here, you can't let the city of Wausau use the logo to represent the city if you want to go after your competitor for using the logo for their business. So they kindly ask if we could maybe not have that be the case. And so to replace this in 1980, the Visitors Bureau, Convention and Visitors Bureau, gets a local artist named Karen Stemper to draw this, which again is a way. She thought it was kind of weird that like she wasn't local here. She wasn't, grew up with the depot. So when she came, she was very confused why by this point in 1980, nobody's taking the train. Like there isn't even train services. So the depot is kind of an antiquated thing. So instead, getting Rim Mountain in the background, Lake Wausau, that's much more of a friendly thing, I guess. Now this doesn't necessarily get used for all that long. But you can see the attempt to try to bring it more currently. Now, eventually, we get this one, which is maybe familiar to many of you if you've been here in this period. In 1992, I think the first uses of this on near Marathon Park on Stewart and 17th Avenue, there was a sign, "Welcome home to Wausau." It appears to have been something that was, I don't know if it was completely from the Wausau Business and Economic Development Council or if it was in conjunction with the city of Wausau. But eventually the city of Wausau by 1993 seems to have adopted it kind of as a quasi-official logo. And eventually even, by the 2000s, they are using it officially on their documents as, representing the city. And partially this is a move like, by this point, you need to have a city is expected not, a logo is kind of helpful, right? You need something for the stationery. You need something on your official envelopes. You need, maybe you're having by the 2000s, a website, right? And it helps to have some sort of thing that ties this all together, which is kind of the modern issue here. And it leads to eventually 2013, this new current logo was introduced. And you can kind of see, again, the attempt here. This is designed to be, let's see here. It was designed to, quote, both reflect the evolving nature of the city and help Wausau rebrand itself to attract new development. And you can kind of see this is a much more modern take on this. It's kind of updating it. It's also a lot easier. Like this is something that you can take the fonts, you can take the feel, the color scheme, and you can make a website around this, and you can market it. It's not just something that represents the city, but it becomes the basis for an identity of the city. And even if you walk around Wausau, you will see signs telling you this neighborhood or that sort of thing, and they kind of make use of this sort of simplified line drawing as a profile. So it has been introduced and used in different ways as well. So yeah, there you go. There's some logos. Just as a side note too, sometimes for anniversaries, they often create a logo or an emblem, as was the case in 72. For the American Bicentennial in Revolutionary Bicentennial, I guess. In 1976, we got this nice star with the sort of very 1970s feel to it, and this is used pretty widely. In this case, this is a national program, and so they had some professional artists probably put a lot of effort into putting this together. Whereas I'm not saying that the one on the right wasn't, well thought out, but it is very much just like the seal of Marathon County, the core emblem, and then adding some stuff around it. And sometimes you have time to put something together, and sometimes you don't. These were all the things, by the way, that I pulled together largely because as part of the planning for the 150th of the City of Wausau, we ended up putting a logo together. I say we, this was designed by the very talented artists, graphic designers at Sun Printing, I believe. specific names, I apologize. I'm blanking. I had them anyway. This is what they ended up coming up with, which is again a very sort of modern take on this in many ways. No longer do we have Rim Mountain in the distance because that's kind of an odd thing to kind of throw in there, considering Rim Mountain is its own. It's you know the park isn't actually in the city of Wausau. So let's focus on the city itself. Let's have some nondescript buildings that can represent and do both sides of the river, right? Where there's an east and west side where it's not just downtown Wausau like sometimes it's represented as. And yeah, it's a good opportunity to have like a color scheme that you can use, for example, to make a website. And if you haven't seen this, by the way, hey, there's a website for the ongoing celebration for the 150th. And so there's the logo, there's some stuff. If it's celebratewausau.org is the URL there. And there's events coming up. You can find out about stuff like, for example, coming up not this weekend but next weekend. Double check that. Yeah, great. Next weekend is the sort of kickoff at Winterfest, of which the Marathon County Historical Society will have a booth. So come on and find us for that. But yeah, there's the events. If you're interested, there's a lot of history and stuff that we put on this as well as sort of some of the itinerary for some of the things coming up. So. And Marathon County Historical Society is part of this. We're going to be doing some events in conjunction as part of this as well. So that's why I'm using we there, I guess. Yeah, I think that's maybe a good place to stop. I will say also, next week, one of the other partners in this endeavor for the Celebrate Wausau, the 150th, is the River District. And so next week we will actually have Blake, the director there. He's going to come in and have a conversation about what they do and where they came from. So the Wausau River District, that'll be next week at our usual time, 12:30 on Thursday. So hopefully you come back for that. That'll be a great discussion. And might not know exactly what they do or what they get up to, but they do a lot. Yeah, learn about that. Okay. I'm just going to, yeah, so that's the program today. I'll give everybody a chance here to maybe I'm going to check over and see if there's any questions or comments or anything we want to talk about. But, oh, here we go. Nope. There we go. Let me take a look. If you have any, this is time. I'll also say, by the way, coming up in February, we're going to be doing some programs that are going to be kind of less formal. We're not going to have like a full-on theme the way we sometimes do. Instead, we're going to be kind of leaving it up and asking what questions you want us to. So you have a short question, long question. Maybe you think it's very simple. Maybe it's more in depth. If there's something that you've always wanted to know about the history of Wausau or Marathon County, I would really love to hear what you have to say. Because we're going to try to answer as many of those as we can. So if you have any questions, I'm just going to keep reminding you. Feel free to comment with those or get in touch with us with anything that you're always curious about, and we'll see if we can answer some of those. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it looks like Cheryl commented here about when the first thing she saw when they got off the highway from Connecticut in 2004 was the "Welcome Home to Wausau" sign. Yeah, I think that this definitely has a nostalgia for people who were around in the 90s and early 2000s, because it is very much one of those things that you see, and it's a pretty good logo. Let's see here. All right, so we got some spam on YouTube. That's not helpful. Remove that. Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap up. If there's any other last minute comments or what have you, again, if you have any thoughts about what you want to know, doesn't have to be something that you think that we can build a whole program around or anything. It can just odd questions that might occur to you about the county's history. Feel free to let us know those. That would be very welcome. Otherwise, we'll maybe call it there for the afternoon. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you, as always, for joining us and watching these. It means a lot, and hopefully enjoy them. We'll see you next week with some more history.